And our stream is live. I'll wait for a couple viewers and then we can get started.
All right, I am getting my headphones in order so I can listen to our intro music. We'll be talking about the thing that is playing the music in a couple minutes. My, the new toy that obviously my 4-year-old son needed this new toy and he likes playing with it, but I also like playing with this.
Are you sure it was just your son, Steve, that needed this toy?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is specifically a synthesizer built for two people. Like that's its tagline. So it's like, oh, this is a bonding thing for father and son. We can make some bloops and blorps, beeps and bops together. And yeah, he'll sit for like 40 minutes just turning the knobs, pushing the buttons, and it's fun.
Huh. Looks like our fans have arrived, so I'm gonna close the overlay.
All right, I've got my personal iPad here, so I can see that we are indeed later on we'll be talking about the question, how do I know it's working? And I always want to answer that question. It's like, how do I know that our stream is working? Well, I've got the other iPad over here. It's like, oh, I can see myself on my phone. There I am holding it up.
With the 3-second lag, right, where you're like, I'm gonna hold it up and then I'm gonna hold it up on stream 3 seconds later.
It's a nearly live stream. It's not quite like broadcast television with a 7-second delay so that naughty words can be excised from the broadcast on demand.
Oh, there's a game. We should talk about it a little later that I've been playing that I'm really enjoying.
All right.
We're broadcasting. Okay, I'm going to kick us off. Welcome to BoltsnBytes. This is a live stream production brought to you by Pantheon's developer advocacy team. On this weekly series, New with Background Music, we're going to share what's new in open source communities, as well as stuff we've been working on at Pantheon.
And as always, we chat about events, developer tools. We try to spotlight our open source community. And at the end of the show, we'll share a collection of links to the many different things we'll be covering today. Sometimes we have giveaways, so hang out with us every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific.
Today we have a very special guest host, Steve Persh. Steve, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey, that's me. I'm Steve Persh. I'm just acting like I'm here all the time, but I'm not. I'm the Director of Technical Marketing at Pantheon. Been with Pantheon about 6 years. Before that, made Drupal and WordPress websites, and I'm very happy to be joining you here today, Fatima.
I'm very excited to have you. I'm Fatima. Our viewers should know me already. I'm on the developer advocacy team. First up on the agenda today is calling all Wapus. Last week.
I should have dug out a Wapu pin. I'm just realizing I've got my my Mr. Rogers pin on. Somewhere in my office, I have a bag of Pantheon Wapu pins.
Oh yeah, I used to have a Wapu yoga pin on my desk, but I think I've misplaced him.
Yoga Wapu? Like Wapu?
Yeah, like Wapu doing yoga. I think I got it at WordCamp Phoenix, which was the only WordCamp I got to before the pandemic happened. Speaking of WordCamps, last week was WordCamp US 2021, and we wanted to talk about some of the talks that we are planning to or may have already watched.
Yeah. Disclaimer, neither of us were able to watch it live, but I'm catching up. I'm catching up watching the YouTube video. Fatima, there are like 9-hour YouTube videos, and you could just binge watch like the 9-hour stream all at once. That's not the way I'm going about it. I've gotten a set of recommendations from one of our coworkers of like, okay, this is the order that I recommend you watch them in. It's kind of reminds me of like the Star Wars machete order. Like Star Wars fans have like their very strong opinions about what is the order in which you should watch the Star Wars movies in order to get the best possible experience. And what I really admire about the WordPress community, or one of the things I admire about them and the way they run conferences, is like the conference organizers were clearly very intentional about like structuring the tracks so that they like go in a certain flow. They add up to like, from here's the big idea of Gutenberg to like, right, we're going to now look at individual slices of it and look at it from different perspectives. But yeah, maybe I shouldn't name one of our coworkers sent me a direct message and was like, this is the order in which I recommend that you.
Why did I get this?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, maybe I should have asked before talking about it on the live stream, but I think it's possible that this coworker was like tailoring it for me specifically, knowing like the angle in which that I'd be thinking about these things.
This is the Steve Kirsch curation of talks.
Right. What will refresh Steve on the latest and greatest of Gutenberg, because I have not stayed fully plugged into the ever-changing Gutenberg ecosystem, but I do like what I'm seeing. Like, it is, I think, clearly fulfilling WordPress's mission to democratize publishing. Like the presentation that I watched this morning looked at Gutenberg development from the perspective of the developer. Like it was Corey Webb's presentation, and it was like it showed enough code to satisfy me. Whereas like the presentation that I watched before from Rich, like, was more high level. It talked about like the blocks behind the blocks, like what are the
but you wanted to see the like details.
Like, all right, but I'm not going to be satisfied until I see more code. So in Corey's, I was like, okay, this is now showing me enough code that I'm not feeling that like, okay, I just need more. I need more.
Yeah, and you were telling me he was asked a really interesting question in the chat.
Yeah, so they had like 40 minutes for that time block, and after 25 or so minutes of a presentation, it was Q&A, and one of the questions that came in was like, what's the difference between Gutenberg and Drupal? Like, Fatima, you've been at Pantheon like 2 years.
It's not now. Apples to apples.
It is not apples to apples. But we at Pantheon, like, we get questions all the time about Drupal versus WordPress, which is better? Mm-hmm. When do I use what? Like, in your 2 years at Pantheon, how have you navigated that question?
Oh, it's a hard question to ask. I think you have to stop them and be like, what's your need? Like, what's your use case? And like, what kind of site are you looking to build? Sometimes they'll show up to the weekly, like the welcome to Pantheon session, and they'll just spam the chat with, which one should I use? And I'm like, either, but really it depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, it is. It's not that simple. And like the hot take from me, which like I've been saying this for enough years that it no longer feels like a hot take, is that with WordPress and the block editor, there's an experience that I think was very intentionally designed for content editors first. Like, WordPress has this community-wide mission to democratize publishing. Mm-hmm. And I think that is followed pretty clearly, like pushing more and more power into the hands of the person who is signing into WordPress on a daily basis. And that presentation from Rich that I saw made it pretty clear, like, this is pushing a lot of power into the hands of the person who is signed into the WYSIWYG. And me and my like back-end Drupal developer mindset, I can't help but think, but with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. As soon as you were saying that, I was like, I know a lot of people in Drupal that would be uncomfortable with giving their content editors too much power.
Yeah, I mean, the like webinar series I eventually want to do is like taking a university that has like a design system and multiple sites and just trace through the question, like, who gets to pick which colors where? Because it's not so simple. And like the preference that is clear in Gutenberg is that the person who is signing into WordPress should have the option to change things like color. And like in a given organization, it may be appropriate to say like, no, you can't change the color of this thing. You can change the color of that thing, but not this thing. So like there are places
like governance rules,
right,
within the content.
There like it makes me very happy to see that in like that has been in Gutenberg, and like it's still there, especially as WordPress is pushing into the full site editing mindset. Like there are still switches for a big organization to disable parts. Actually doing that disabling is like a fight waiting to happen. But like the baseline difference, in my opinion, between the WordPress block editor experience and what you see in Drupal with something like Layout Builder is that they're building very similar tools, but from different starting points. Like with WordPress, it starts as like, this is a WYSIWYG. Let's default to putting all the power into the hands of the content editor, the person who signed into WordPress on a daily basis. And with Drupal, it's starting from the grounding in like the panels and page manager ecosystem that grew in Drupal 6 and 7 and 8. And now with Layout Builder and Drupal core, it's asking the question, can we take these tools that were built for site builders first and make them work as content editing tools? And like, you can go either direction. It's my expectation though that like the people who are doing the content editing will probably be happier with the tool that was built first with them in mind, not the tool
that's
that
probably why most Drupal sites with like more than one content component also come with a packet of like how to use this layout system that we've built for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of training involved with that second approach.
Yes. And like there's going to be a lot of training involved in complex Gutenberg or block editor based sites too. I think the difficult line to walk is that line of power and responsibility. Like if every content editor has options to change things like padding, like that to me feels like
that's scary
situations.
Yeah.
A lot of it is not just CSS and JavaScript, but a lot of it is putting into the block editor putting into the block editor interface like direct control over CSS properties like padding. And my personal take is like that's too far.
Yeah, I personally like have a visceral reaction to that. I think it's because content editors I've worked with aren't trained to understand HTML or CSS. And so that would make me really nervous.
Yeah, and like there are places, if you're making a full complex site, to like write CSS, but there are also places to just give direct control over CSS properties into the editor, and that has big pluses and minuses.
Yeah, I think you're right that like it can get really weird on either extreme end, but hopefully people can figure out what works for their team specifically. But it's interesting that they approach it from a completely different like user.
Well, I like that it does start with the content editor, like the person who's going to have to live with this site for a long time, because so much of my experience making websites, I was the Drupal backend developer or the Drupal architect, and just the constraints of the projects that I worked on were such that we had enough budget to like rebuild the website in Drupal 7, and that was pretty much it. Then the site goes live, and maybe there's a phase 2 where more stuff happens, but often not. And I would just hope that the decisions that I was making on behalf of content editors that I had some discovery meetings with, that like the decisions I made played out well for them over however many years. And the philosophy or the mindset that I'm seeing in the WordPress block editor forces more conversations. Like I don't think a site builder or developer could say like, yep, here are your blocks, go ahead. Like you're definitely going to have ongoing conversations. Like, and you probably like I should have been having those too in my Drupal 7 site building days. But here it's even clear that like, oh yes, you're definitely going to need to keep the communication lines open between the people using the blocks and the people who know how to redefine the blocks.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about where that's going.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing what you learned from that talk you watched this morning. That's a lot from one talk.
Well, it was two. So it was two.
Two talks.
And I need to watch two more because tomorrow morning internally at Pantheon, we're doing like a WordCamp US retro that'll feature some of the people who are actually there live.
What are the other two talks that you're planning on watching, Steve?
I don't know the first one. I'll have to recheck that Slack message. But the other one was the one that was all over my Twitter feed from Helen. That the part that I think I will be most interested in is I think she was live demoing with VS Code container integration.
Ooh.
So while I will be interested in the block stuff, I'm also perhaps even more interested in the like, okay, how are these containers working to make a development environment? Because local development is a never-ending frustration for me. Like I started with MAMP 15 years ago, and I've never been 100% happy with any local development option.
I feel that, yeah. Cool. Okay, I will check that out. I'm also looking at, there's a talk called How Green Can a Website Be? And it's about tackling climate change through websites that I'm really interested to see where that premise leads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of electricity used to make these websites work. And, if we can use less, that's good for everybody.
Yeah. I guess we can move on to the tech showcase.
Yeah.
Steve has a cool device called a synth to show us in picture mode and play us some more tunes.
Yeah, maybe we can do another tech showcase where I talk about how I get this picture-in-picture working.
Oh yeah.
But so yeah, this is the Datto Duo synthesizer. And it's a child's toy. It's meant to be used with two people together. You can get two kids or two adults on either side. And on this side, we've got controls over what notes are playing. So basically, we have a sequence of 8 notes, goes around in a circle.
And they're color coded?
Yeah, so the colors correspond to the different notes here. So if I wanted to change, for instance, this note to something else, I just changed that blue because as this blinking light goes around the circle, it plays the notes. And if I hit it at just the right time, I can change the note being played.
Oh no, that's like hand-eye coordination too.
Right. Like you can also pause and like change the notes out like more one by one with it paused, but I kind of like the challenge of changing it out live.
And then you said that you and your son play this together. How does that work? Or do you change the same set of notes?
You get one person on this side deciding like which notes are being played, how fast they're being played, how long each note is, like the duration. And I'll turn up the volume a little bit more. So yeah, we can make the duration of each note very short.
Interesting.
Or we can make the whole thing go much faster with this boost button that you have to hold down.
I like that. That's more my speed.
Yeah. I mean, we can just set a baseline faster speed.
But I imagine that would make it really hard to replace notes on
Oh, that's true.
Flickr.
Yes. It's much easier to change the notes out when it's going slow. And then there's a random button, which will have things going around in a random order rather than just going around in a circle. And then over on this other side, we've got volume.
Okay.
We've got an accent button. So when this is held down, it accents the note being played, and a glide button.
Whoa!
And then here we're changing the different type of sound waves.
Oh my goodness.
I think, or detuning, I should say. This is more changing. Yeah, this is the waves.
Yeah, you're taking a really simple set of sounds and then making it more complicated. I like this side of the board.
Yeah, and over here we've got the release, just kind of similar to the length. It's like once the note is hit, does it release short or quickly or slowly?
Oh, this is like the pedal in piano.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get my bearings.
And then we've got a delay button.
Okay.
Which again, you have to hold down. Gets an echo thing going. And then a crunch.
Crunch?
Yeah. So I find this endlessly enjoyable, and maybe we should just make something like this the official theme music of Bolts.
Yeah, I think DJ Steve is gonna need to make us some tunes for the show, right. Like an intro and an intermission and an outro.
All right. And oh yeah, drums.
Whoa!
Boom.
Very cool.
That's been fun. All right, slow fade.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. That was super fun. That's been our most hands-on tech showcase. I like that.
I need to get my son playing with it more. He has fun with it when we do. But in the meantime, it's just on my desk.
It's great. I know people try to play like music when we're starting these all hands meetings, and maybe we should all just have synths that we can just like create our own music.
Well, one thing I like about the synth for starting work meetings is I don't have to like think through like, wait, what are the lyrics in this song? Like, right. This is a song I enjoy, but like, hold on, I need to think through the lyrics, make sure we're not doing something inappropriate for work. At an internal presentation, I recommended to one of my fellow Minnesotan coworkers, like, let's use Prince music as the intro. And she was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, specifically, I mean the Prince children's song, Starfish and Coffee. There are plenty of Prince songs that I would not want to play for a work meeting.
But the children's version is probably the same.
But the children's song, Starfish and Coffee, if you haven't seen, one more link to add. I didn't know we were going to add another link here, Fatima.
That's cool. I can find it.
Prince did with the Muppets. We'll find that on YouTube and add that to the links. All right, what do we have next on our rundown?
Next up, we have a very exciting deep dive. We're going to do a Pantheon spotlight on the global CDN.
Rock and roll. All right.
I hope you're ready to screen share.
I'll turn on my screen share now.
For our viewers, you might want to open it up in full screen because you're going to need the real estate.
Yes. Well, we've got two side-by-side windows here. I've got Chrome. I've got Firefox. What we're looking at is Umami, everybody's favorite sample Drupal site. Comes with Drupal core, some sample content with recipes, articles about food, and whatnot. So the thing I want to walk through here, Fatima, is the benefit of full page caching, especially when it's done with a global content delivery network, a CDN, to make sites load faster. And depending on how long it takes to talk through that, we'll hopefully get to the new experience protection feature in global CDN that keeps the public version of the website accessible, even if Drupal itself is somehow down or like the origin infrastructure is not available.
Okay.
All right. So Fatima, how comfortable are you with with the caching settings in Drupal core?
Not super comfortable.
I'll say I did not really understand what these meant or how they worked when I first started using Drupal. It's like, caching sounds like a good thing, make the site faster. But it wasn't until like maybe a year or two before I started at Pantheon that I started to understand, like, okay, what's really happening that makes this part work? Like, what changes when I click these buttons? Like, I knew to click these buttons in Drupal, but I really didn't know what's happening on the other side. So what's happening on the other side for the general public, if I browse around. So here on the homepage for Umami, I've got this
Ooh.
Chrome plugin, which helps highlight like the relevant pieces of metadata.
Okay.
You can also get to these relevant pieces of metadata by digging inside of the regular Chrome developer tools.
Oh, this is usually where we look if we have customers who have caching issues.
Yes. Yes. So we can dig in and see like, okay, so what was the first request? It was to the homepage, and we can see that it was a GET request and that its age, like the number of seconds that it lived inside of our global CDN.
So it's not cached at all.
Right. It's not cached at all because we just over here said no caching.
No caching.
No caching at all.
For the entire site? Oh, okay.
Right. So like, you know, I want to show before and after. So I do not recommend that that you do this on like your live site. Play around with this kind of stuff on a development site like I'm doing here. One of the benefits that we get with Pantheon's global CDN is that all of this stuff just works the same across dev, test, and live environments. Like there's some tiny details that are different on the dev environment to accommodate things like if you're hacking your CSS on the dev environment and just want to see changes faster, like tiny differences like that. But like the baseline stuff of like, do I have caching on at all or not? That's the same across dev, test, and live. So when it's off, this cache control header gets set to must revalidate, no cache, private, which I guess is just a way of saying, I really, really mean it. Do not cache this thing. And when we change it back to, I'll change it back to a day.
Okay.
Deciding how long you want to cache is probably a deeper dive that we won't that we'll get into here. But let's just imagine we say, yes, please, lots of caching. So I'll refresh again. Come on. And it took 2 seconds to get that initial response. I think because I just cleared caches, so it had to go all the way to origin, and
11 milliseconds.
But 11 milliseconds is a whole lot faster. Or 11 seconds is the number of full seconds that it took to get, or that this page was sitting in the cache. Oh, that's why I was thrown off, because 11 is both the number of milliseconds that my browser had to wait to go to
as well as the
data center
cache load.
And just coincidentally, this page has been cached for 11 total seconds.
11 seconds. That was a good click, Steve.
Yeah, you know, those are the kinds of things you don't run into when running through these sorts of live demos. What if you get confused by the fact that the number of milliseconds
the numbers are the
is the same as the number of seconds for another thing? All right, so when I refresh again, the number of milliseconds that it took to get the response is again very low, 3 milliseconds, and the number of seconds that this thing has been in the cache is now 59. Okay, so far so good.
And so that number 59 will increase until it hits a full day, and then it'll grab the site from the CDN.
Yes, with the caveat that max age is not the same as we guarantee that this thing will live in the cache for exactly this number of seconds. Like Fastly, the infrastructure provider for our CDN, might have their own internal logic that notices nobody's coming to this development site's homepage. I do have a cache for it here, but nobody's using it. I'm just going to toss it out. So like maximum age is the longest that Fastly will hold on to it.
But it might clear it before that.
Right. And like that's not a Fastly specific thing. Like even any sort of CDN or cache around a site should have some logic for noticing I was told to hang on to this page forever, but no one's using it. There's only so much storage space for these kinds of things.
Gotcha.
And yeah, that's a detail that I wish we had more control over. But if Drupal is just running, and if this page gets removed from the cache, well, then Fastly will just ask Drupal like, hey, make another version of the homepage, and Drupal will do so in like a couple hundred milliseconds. So it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
But what if the Drupal site is not accessible at all? So for this part of the demo, Fatima, can you break into the Google Cloud Data Center in Iowa, like Tom Cruise Mission Impossible style, and start pulling out wires?
Sure. I will BRB.
Right.
I'm gonna jump into my helicarrier.
So we're not going to do that, but like if the power goes out at Google Cloud, I didn't think through like what would happen if Google Cloud did a thing like Facebook did and just blew up DNS. I imagine this experience protection thing would benefit us here too. So we don't have the power to unplug wires inside of Google Cloud, and we're not going to totally break our DNS to simulate what an outage would look like.
But we can put the site in maintenance mode.
Put the site in maintenance mode, yes. And I'll refresh again. And for the not logged in user, it doesn't change anything. Like I still got a response in 6 milliseconds.
Oh, because it's still cached.
Because it's still cached. So we've yet to get to the new experience protection part, because like Fastly here isn't even checking. The CDN isn't even checking with Drupal like, hey, do you have a new version of the homepage? Because it was told your version of the homepage is good for a whole day, and it's only been like 4 minutes. So it's not even checking. It would check though if we cleared the caches.
Okay.
If we clear the caches, then the CDN will know like, I'm supposed to go get a new version of the homepage.
Right. And there won't be because it's in maintenance mode.
Or will there be? That's what we're about to find out, Fatima.
Synth drum roll, please.
Oh yeah, this is.
It's okay. It's okay.
This is the moment. Hey, look! It's still got a cached response. All right.
Wait, what?
I know, right? So this is.
So I expected a page that was just like sites in maintenance mode.
Right.
Check back later. Yeah.
Right. Because we cleared the caches.
Yeah.
So what happened instead is the CDN saw a request come in for the homepage, saw that it had a cached copy from 5 minutes ago, but it had been told to get rid of that. It had been told like, this is cleared this away. And so it spent 467 milliseconds asking, which, a half second, asking Google Cloud, like, hey, do you have a new version of the homepage? Because the old one was cleared. And what it got back was, I'm in maintenance mode. And the CDN
can't help you.
Okay, I think it's better to show the old version from 5 minutes ago than to show this maintenance mode error page. So that is how we see this this homepage. This is not magic though. Like, this only works if there was a recent version of the page. If I look at other pages that like I had not
as soon as you start clicking around,
climbing in the cache, and I'm getting my my keyboard shortcuts mixed up here. What is the one that I want? All right, mixing up the keyboard shortcuts. But yeah, as I open other tabs to pages that
you'll get the site under maintenance.
Yeah, then you get the site under maintenance mode. So this isn't like magic, keep your website up forever, but it is a way of closing off failed.
Buys you a little bit of time.
Yeah. And
like if you did something and it's very bad, it buys you a little bit of time before your site goes down.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's most helpful to the most trafficked pages. Like if we did not have this thing and we got the maintenance mode message on the homepage, that'd be bad. We'd be getting emails and phone calls being like, why is the whole site down? But if you only see this site under maintenance page on like the least trafficked taxonomy listing pages, like if no one in the last day has looked at the listing page for herbs, well then maybe
no one will look at it while it's down.
Maybe. so yes, I mean the big idea here is that we are, we're always keeping track of stats like uptime, and with Fastly as that CDN provider, we get a lot of data that tells us like how many requests are getting served successfully, and we want to minimize the number of like 503 errors or any sort of 500 error that gets all the way to the browser. So this is one way of closing off a whole lot of 500 type of errors, because maintenance mode is something that's built into Drupal core. It like you are meant to be able to turn this on, but just from the level of HTTP response headers, this is getting sent out by Drupal as a server error message. Like, even though Drupal is there, I can turn off the maintenance mode at any time. Drupal is telling everything in front of it, like, this is a server error. And from Pantheon's perspective, we want to minimize the number of server error status codes that get sent all the way out to the people browsing your website. So this feature is a way to chop down on that number.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So next time you trip over a wire or someone brings the server down, you might still have a couple of minutes before anyone knows what's wrong, especially on pages that people have been visiting, which are the most important pages on your site generally.
Yeah.
Except for that one person who goes to the search instead of.
Right. I suppose, yes, there are lots of ways to get through this sort of cache. Like this is another reason to not add a million get parameters onto the end of like the URLs.
Because then you will need a fresh page.
Yeah, because if you add garbage get parameters at the end, you then bypass the cache. All right, we're at 38 minutes into our live stream. I could talk about the global CDN all day, but as the main host, I will leave it to your discretion as to whether or not we should just keep rolling.
I think we should give people some next steps. And then if there's a lot of interest in this, we should bring you back for some more deep dives.
All right.
So like if people want this on their site, and they're a Pantheon customer, like what should they do?
So the experience protection feature is just rolled out for everybody now. Like if your website sends out a 503, like this is doing, and it's sending out that 503 because you turned on maintenance mode, because you accidentally deployed a PHP error that's affecting all of your site.
Or you broke an import.
Like, I mean, 503s can happen for all sorts of reasons. It's already there just for everybody. You don't have to do anything.
That's exciting.
Yeah. There are parts of the CDN that you get the most out of if you use our module and plugin on the WordPress side that have been available ever since we released the CDN. It's called Pantheon Advanced Page Cache, and it's the thing that handles the clearing of caches when content changes. So I'll just do a super quick demo of that. Bring the site out of maintenance mode.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
This is Pantheon Advanced Page Cache is like selective cache clearing. So if you're working on an article, it knows that you've updated it and will clear the cache specifically for that page or the pages where it appears.
Yeah. So this, now that we're out of maintenance mode, this quiche recipe is getting cached in our CDN. Great, great, great.
Yep.
What if we decide that this recipe is so exciting that it needs an exclamation point in the title? We'll say
I love it.
That. And logged in, I see it immediately, because logged in, I'm just totally bypassing the CDN
cache settings. Okay.
But the friction point that we want teams using Pantheon to avoid is like the content editor adds the exclamation point because someone told them like, you gotta add an exclamation point to them, and they reply.
I mean, what if it's a typo? Like,
right, I mean,
you want that fixed immediately.
Yes, you want that fixed immediately. And like the really bad situation that we want teams using Pantheon avoiding is like the significant erosion of trust that happens if you're the person who tells me like, hey Steve, there's a typo, and I reply back saying like, oh no, I fixed it, and I tell you, I'm like,
I don't see it.
Right, and you refresh, and you're like, Steve, how can I trust anything you say? Because like
the typo is still there.
The typo is still there. Why am I seeing it? And like, that's a bad situation to be in. So some Drupal and WordPress teams out there will just like blow away the whole cache anytime any content is saved, and that's
expensive.
That's excessive and expensive. And hey, if we're reducing electricity usage on the internet, then we should not blow away all caches every time.
Pantheon Advanced Page Cache makes your website more green.
It would be, I mean, yes.
Very minute.
On the surface, that checks out. It would be difficult for us. That's a fun challenge for some data wizard to figure out like how much electricity, how much carbon is saved because of this feature. I don't know.
I'm writing that down.
All right, for a future discussion topic.
Well, thanks, Steve. This has been a really cool deep dive. I also learned a little bit about cache.
It's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, now we need like a separate series where we just deep dive tech things.
All right. Well, we'll need different music for that.
This is true. Next up on our agenda, celebrations. We like to pick something every week to celebrate from the community. We heard that next week our friends over at Talking Drupal, so John, Nick, and Steven, are delivering the keynote at Drupal GovCon, and it's called Using Your Passion and Skills to Power Open Source.
Yeah, the Talking Drupal hosts are going to reflect on their journeys in Drupal and in open source, reflect on how it's impacted their lives, their careers, and there'll be a focus on like the non-code contributions, which especially in the pandemic times are the parts that have changed the most. Like I don't know how much they'll go into this angle, but this is part of the question that's interesting to me is like the code contribution parts are still the same. Like you still make pull requests or patches, right, but like the community part is very, very different now in a world with few or no in-person camps and conferences.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also think it's really cool that they're doing like a regular Talking Drupal show, but they're using the keynote as a live recording of their Talking Drupal show. Like it's very meta. And I think that's something we should do for BoltsnBytes. I'm gonna open source that idea for Talking Drupal.
If any conference organizers want BoltsnBytes as your in-person or virtual keynote, Fatima is easily found on the internet.
Yeah, hit me up. I've got a lot of available time over the next couple months. BoltsnBytes is always ready to keynote at your Drupal camp or WordCamp, should you choose to invite us.
There you go. Yeah, I'm enjoying to some degree the shifting of like the medium by which this kind of information gets exchanged, like the conference keynote where like a person is on stage, they do their keynote. Like I like that too, but the all virtual community scene is forcing a lot of rethinking and a lot more creativity.
Yeah, John and I attended, and this wasn't on the agenda, so attended this session with a VR company. They're running like they have this app on, the name is escaping me, but if I find it, I'll add it to the links. But they run this app on the Oculus where you can build these virtual experiences in VR where you can like play clips and design the space. And we were like, okay, well, now we need a 3D camera so we can go to venues and record them and have like virtual conferences.
Yes.
Drift Space. It's called Drift Space. And so we did a demo with Drift Space to check them out. That was kind of cool. We'll see how that, activity pans out.
All right. Well, let me know because I'm interested.
I will hit you up. Speaking of conferences, DrupalCon Europe 2021 just wrapped up this morning. I had 2 talks at 2 a.m. and I've been awake since. It's been a wild morning. I was just, what you were just saying about, keynotes being different. It's really cool to give a talk and see a live chat. I know it's distracting for some people, but I really enjoy like stopping and commenting on the chat and like having that. And I think that never happens in-person sessions because you're crunch time and it's not very like, it's not etiquette to like interrupt the speaker and just have a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the most exciting shifts for me working as like a Pantheon remote employee is that the playing field has been leveled to some degree. Like I particularly enjoy inside of Pantheon when we do larger meetings where it's a Zoom and everyone appears like at the same size in the Zoom. That's just different than like a meeting in the office where a few people are in front of everybody and it's like a one-way presentation. I suppose that's to some degree like what we're doing here right now, live streaming. And if we want to, we could look on Twitter and see what's happening. But I like that many of these virtual conference formats or even just regular Zoom, like by default puts everyone on the same footing.
Yeah, I never thought of that. But yeah, there aren't those dynamics in the room where you feel like those are the presenters and I'm not, whereas you can just raise your hand and speak.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I have a lot of virtual conference and meeting confidence, and I don't know how it will translate like in the next year. Like, I feel like I'm going to end up in front of a room of people and be like, I don't remember how to speak in public. I like speaking from the comfort of my desk.
I like it too, though I do miss the in-person camaraderie that can happen.
Me too. Hallway track.
Yeah. Yeah. For Pantheon's own WebOps summit that we had last week, part of the Pantheon staff was all together in Las Vegas. Like the main track and the main host were operating out of a studio there, and like that group, like they got that like in-person bonding experience in a way that's present to some degree for the virtual attendees, but it's not guaranteed, and it is hard to replicate like being side by side with people.
Yeah, I know Zoom, some other tools like Teams have the like classroom and you can like put everybody in like seats and like other weird things, but we'll see how that. Yeah. Speaking of DrupalCon, it wrapped up earlier this morning, but mentored contribution sprints are still happening and you can join them in open social. I think there was a first time contributors workshop on Tuesday. But highly recommend that if you're new to contribution. Otherwise, you should totally join the mentored sprints. And then we like to end off the show, Steve, with just some casual conversation. It's usually about coffee. So I asked Steve if he had a coffee story, and he had a story that was kind of a hybrid story. It was about coffee and improv.
Yes.
And so, Steve, want to tell us about your experience with coffee?
Yeah, I suppose it was roughly 10 years ago that I realized after too long that I had that I had grown dependent on my 1 cup of coffee a day. I was working in an office. I would just drink a cup of coffee in the office, and on Saturdays I would have my improv team rehearsal at like 2:00 in the afternoon, and I would just feel down. I'd have a headache, and I started to think, maybe it's time for me to be done with this improv thing, because my body is telling me that I do not like improv rehearsal.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh wait, I'm drinking caffeine 5 days a week, and then I'm not drinking that on Sunday or Saturdays and Sundays. So I need to start doing that. So I did. And that made improv rehearsal a little bit more tolerable, but I still realized that I needed to get out of that too.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
Are you still drinking a cup of coffee?
Yes, I stop at 1. How about you?
Yesterday we had like a coffee making social event at Pantheon. It was among the many social events you could do. And I drank 3 cups of coffee. But I think that's...
Did you add sugar to the coffee?
No, never.
Okay. I was trying to set up something with your username. You don't overflow the sugar in your coffee.
The glucose has run over
beyond capacity.
I think it's just I have naturally produced glucose, so.
Are you saying that you're a plant and you like photosynthesize? Is that what's going on?
Me and my key lights, I photosynthesize.
Yep.
Wow, that is some remote life. Yeah, that's a remote life conversation.
Started to photosynthesize, and I'm proud of you for that journey.
Oh my gosh. Virtual photosynthesis. I like it.
All right. Yeah.
I almost feel like that should be a challenge on a future show. Like, tell us how you virtually photosynthesize. Like, how do you re-energize yourself when you're working from home?
I mean, naps sometimes. Not all the time, but every once in a while. That's just the best way to do it, in my experience.
Going outside. I definitely need to take more walks.
That too.
I had a good get up in the morning and walk around the block and go to work routine that I just dumped. I was like, can't do this anymore.
I'm looking for it around my desk. I read the Checklist Manifesto recently. Great book.
Checklist Manifesto.
Yeah, Checklist Manifesto. It's written from the perspective of surgeons and their pre-surgery checklists. And it emphasizes doing a quick checklist at a natural pause point. So I've been doing that for 2 or 3 months now. I guess since I got back from paternity leave. So yeah, about 2 months. 1 month. 1 month. 1 month. Time in the pandemic is
meaningless. Makes no sense. Yeah.
But now I use an app on my phone where before I turn on my computer, I ask, do I have a full water bottle on my desk? Do I have my paper planner on my desk? Things that I should just do. But it's nice to just be like, check, check, check. Yes, I've done those things. And then after my computer is on, before I look at Slack, have I done these other things? Because Slack will just eat all of my attention if I let it.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for this very sage advice. On that note, I think I'll end the show. So thank you everyone for joining us for BoltsnBytes. If you'd like to be featured in our celebrations, you should join our weekly Working Out Loud thread in the forums. Yeah, can I get the music, DJ Steve? Can't really hear it.
No.
Got it. If you've got questions or updates or things to share, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, you should reach out to us. You can find us on the Twitters or on Pantheon community Slack. Steve, I think you've got some homework for folks this week.
Yes, if you haven't done so yet, and you are running sites on Pantheon, I recommend using that Pantheon Advanced Page Cache plugin or module. Any site on Pantheon, I recommend.
Awesome. So that's what we recommend you do after this deep dive. And then if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like. Leave us a comment if you've, with your coffee story, your caching nightmare, or if you really liked our intro music. We're live every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for joining us, Steve. I would really like to have you on the show more often. I think we had a really cool conversation.
Thanks for having me.
See you around in the community, and I'm going to turn off the live stream.